We are back with a new episode of the Our View podcast, and I wanted to have a conversation about grief. So let's talk. This year in April, it will be 25 years since my dad died. There may be something a few times each year where I will speak about him out loud to a family member or friend. 25 years later, and I think of him often still. Most of the time, that brings a smile to my face, and sometimes it still brings a few tears. It typically does not impact much of my day, though. I can remember being a child and riding in the car with him and our family, and he would direct our attention to the sky to point out a red-tailed hawk flying up above. I always wondered how he knew it was a red-tailed hawk. Well, of course, it's because with the sun reflecting on the tail, you can see that the hawk has a red tail. It was still amazing to me that he knew what kind of bird it was flying up in the sky, being a little child, a young child. uh, it was just really cool that he could tell what kind of bird it was, even though it was flying so high up in the sky. After my dad passed away, the very first time my mom, my sister, and I saw a red-tailed hawk was the very next morning after he died. A hawk sat in the tree in our front yard. And ever since that day, the sight of a red-tailed hawk in the sky or sitting on a tree branch would bring memories of my dad flooding back to my mind. I had to give that background story to share something that happened to me this past Friday. It was quite the unique experience, and afterward I had a wide range of feelings and emotions that were attached to this experience. I was leaving my apartment to run some errands. It was supposed to rain here all night on Friday and most of the day on Saturday, so I wanted to get out early as possible to pick up a few things from the store and just to do a few other things outside of the house. So as soon as I opened my door to leave my apartment, there was a red-tailed hawk that was maybe 10 feet away from my door on the sidewalk facing my door. Of course, as I mentioned, I immediately thought of my dad. And after I said a few expressive words, as the jungle bird flew away, I said, "All right now, Art, tread lightly. I don't need any up-close signs like that. Go on in the tree or in the sky." After that experience, I just felt very off for some reason for the next few hours. I wasn't happy, but I also wasn't sad. I was just a little off. Looking back on it now, I can put a name to those feelings. I felt lost. I needed guidance, safety, a sense of security, and something familiar. I was already out, and I was actually in the area near where I grew up. So I know a few friends and some of my own family who still live in that area. I thought for a few minutes about where I could go, who I could call, and one person immediately came to my mind. It's one of my best friend's dads. So I called him. I said I was near his house and I was going to stop by if that was okay. He never questioned why. He simply said he was home and he would be there and he was looking forward to seeing me. He and I spent 2 hours sitting on his couch in conversation. We talked about some old memories. We had both discussed our upcoming plans for the future. And in that whole 2 hours, I never once brought up my dad in our conversation. And yet somehow when I left, I had that sense of security that I was looking for. That unsteady feeling was gone. The best part was that I didn't even tell his daughter, my friend, that I went to visit him until after I left. I shared this story for a few specific reasons. The first reason is that when I started this podcast back in 2020, I wanted to not only share conversations that I had with others within the disability community, I also wanted to share more parts of my life, my inner thoughts, and all of the shenanigans I get into every once in a while. Lastly, I shared this story because I lost my dad when I was 17. As I sit here now as a 42-year-old, I am noticing that there are friends and family members who in recent years have lost their parents. There may be some of you who are listening to this podcast who have experienced a loss in the last few years, or the loss, like mine with my dad, may have been more than 2 decades ago. I shared this story to let you all know that there is truly no timeline on grief and how that grief impacts you. I know for sure that no one will ever take the place of my dad or anyone in my life who I have lost since his passing. I do strongly believe with my whole heart that there are people in my life and people in your life who exhibit the same characteristics as those we love, who are there to comfort us in their absence. I encourage you to identify those people who are in your life, people you can turn to when you feel that you are just a little bit off centered, people who will remind you of who you are and what you are made of.